Imagine a world where the last bite of a meal doesn't leave you feeling overindulged or guilty. What if I told you there's a simple behavioural technique that can transform your ability to stop when you've had enough? Intrigued? Let me share with you a little known feature of what animals do when they stop eating, which can really help you and me. In this video, I'm going to explain the behavioural satiety sequence described by scientists who are studying animal feeding behaviour. I'm going to describe the elements of this behavioural satiety sequence, and then I'm going to show you how you can create your own behavioural satiety sequence to help you stop eating when you want. This will support you developing a greater sense of control over your eating and your ability to eat in tune with your body. So first, I'm going to explain what we mean by a behavioural satiety sequence. In studying the feeding behaviour of different species, scientists discovered a specific and consistent pattern of behaviour that followed termination of a meal. This varied between species, so that rodents engage in grooming and then resting, whilst pigeons drink water, then preen themselves and then fall asleep. Satiety refers to not wanting to keep eating, and the scientists coined this term behavioural satiety sequence to reflect the fact that animals had moved their attention and their behaviour onto something else. What fascinated the scientists was this fact of how predictable and consistent these patterns were. Even more interesting, it turned out that these behavioural sequences were activated at a biological level by changes in gut hormones. As the gut registers fullness, it tells the brain to move towards different activities. In a minute, I'll explain to you how you can make your own specific sequence to help you stop eating when you're at the point of being just full. I first read about the behavioural satiety sequence when I was developing appetite retraining. I was struck that this is what I myself needed at the end of a meal. Stopping at the point of being just full, that is +3 on the appetite pendulum, didn't come very naturally to me, so I was interested in anything that would help. I realised that if I planned exactly what I was going to do at the end of a meal before I started eating, it was going to make it much easier for me to stop. By moving away from food and switching my attention meant that my mind would now be on something else. The thing I decided to do at the end of evening meals was to move on to doing a jigsaw puzzle. I enjoy doing jigsaws, and they're quite absorbing, and they use your hands as well as your mind. So I experimented with this and I found it surprisingly helpful. I found that after I'd been doing a puzzle for about half an hour, I really wasn't thinking about food anymore, and I didn't have to keep on doing the jigsaw. I could just move on with the rest of my evening. Doing this day in, day out, it meant that it became second nature, and it actually became second nature to stop eating at the point of being just full. And I don't still do jigsaw puzzles now. I don't need to, because it's just become part of how I eat, to stop at the point of being just full. This specific technique is something that's helped a lot of people that I've worked with to make the transition from eating to not eating, and it's so simple. So let's look at what the elements of a successful behavioural satiety sequence are going to look like. First of all, it needs to be something that takes you away from food. Second, it needs to be something that's planned in advance so that you're not having to do the thinking when you're in the situation, you've already done it. Third, it needs to be something simple so you can just go and do it. Fourth, ideally it's something that is incompatible with eating. Something that's called a competitive behaviour. So it would be very difficult to do this other thing and eat at the same time. And finally, it helps if the thing that you're going to do would last about 20 or 30 minutes, because by then your brain will have registered far more fullness signals and you're less likely to be wanting to keep eating. Okay, let's look at what your behavioural satiety sequence might look like if you want to try this. Remember that the sequence ideally needs to take you away from food and reminders of food, so ideally away from the kitchen. It wants to be something that absorbs your hands as well as your mind if possible, certainly something that's distracting. Work out exactly what you're going to do when you finish eating so that you've got that very simple do A, then B, then C already planned out. and have things ready to make this easy to do, so that if your satiety sequence is going to be going to the other room and read a magazine while I'm drinking coffee, then the things that would need to be in place are maybe having a magazine next to the chair ready to read, and having the stuff ready by the kettle to make the coffee. So then once you've got this plan, it's a very simple plan, it's already prepared in terms of the planning and the preparation, and you just do it. And then you keep doing it day in, day out, whenever the situation applies. And I suggest that you keep doing it until you no longer need to do it. In other words, it's become so second nature that it's incidental, so that now you could actually be at the table and find it quite easy to stop eating and not need to go and do something else. And as we've already seen, it's helpful if the behavioural satiety sequence that you're going to use is going to last 20 or 30 minutes, so that your brain is going to get all the fullness signals. Now, I'm well aware that being able to do what I've just suggested is absolute pie in the sky, being able to take 20 or 30 minutes of downtime after a meal, if circumstances mean that it's impossible, like if you're a carer or if you've got young children, that might be out of the question. In which case, you could still use this if you're able to rejig your evening. Would it be possible to make bath time immediately after a meal, so that a job that you'd be doing anyway becomes part of the sequence? Or maybe you could choose a particular chore that's going to need doing at some time, something like maybe ironing, which has all the characteristics of the sort of behaviour we're looking for. It absorbs your mind and your hands. It's incompatible with eating, and maybe you could do it for 20 or 30 minutes. This sequence, of course, doesn't have to be identical every time. It could be that you have different sequences for different days. You might not have enough ironing to be doing it for 20 minutes a night. So here we're talking about an activity that you can still go and do. It's not the luxury of downtime, but it does have the characteristics we're looking for something to support you stopping eating when you intend to. If you've been struggling to change how you eat and you're looking for more insights and support, then professional coaching with me might be an option. You can find the link to the application form for this in the details in the description. Please remember to like, subscribe and share this video with anybody you think might be interested. My next video is about how to know when you're just full.